All right, good morning. Good to be together across 3 campuses. Welcome, Campbell and Union. And we live stream this, so we literally are in the same moment. If you're a first-time guest, we're thrilled that you're here. I want to give you a heads up if you haven't heard it already in the intro. We're talking about family. Now, some of you know my story. I was 35 before I got married, so I grew up in the church. I heard a lot of messages, right, where I showed up at church, the guy in front said, hey, we're talking about marriage and parenting. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll come back next week, right? Like, okay, maybe this isn't going to apply. But here, I just want to frame it this way, because I know that this is a little bit more exclusive as far as the target. But I want, ideally, every single one of us who have any kind of influence with anybody younger than us, I believe that what we're going to look at today applies. Along with the fact, and I know I bang this drum often, but first-time guests, you need to know, when we think about church, we're talking about family. We don't believe that this faith journey is meant to be lived in isolation. You're alongside friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, people who care about you, want to walk with you. And so I'm going to talk about that specifically in 2 weeks. Had my mom here last week, right? She brought some great stories and it was a life-giving message to us. And she's, right, gained a lot more wisdom than I have in life experience and parenting. And next week, we're going to have L.D. Campbell, who has gained even more life experience with parenting. He's going to speak to all stages of life. So we're trying to cover it all here, but wanted to give you a heads up because this is an intentional message about marriage and parenting today. Also, if you missed this last week, especially those of you that are married or maybe even not married yet, 2 areas of focus we want to have going forward, because over the years when I've talked about family, I'm always like, I want to be able to do more to equip and encourage couples. And so one of the things that we're doing, we're in the beginning stages of training up marriage mentors. Again, when it comes to church as a family, embracing, maximizing our multi-generational church. Longtime attenders, you know how passionate I am about this and how much we need to improve in our older generation interacting with younger generation. We want to raise up marriage mentors so that, right, before you get married and as you go through marriage, right, if you need to be encouraged, you're going through a specific life experience, we want to connect you with somebody else in our church family who maybe has gone through it as well, and just build that relationship, walk with each other. Because we know that not counseling, right, we sometimes jump to that. We need to start with, hey, what can our church family do? So that information is on the website, the Church Center app. The other thing, though, when it comes to counseling, we know that couples who are at the end of their rope, they're in crisis, they do need some clinical help. The last thing we want is for you not to go to counseling because of the cost. So part of our Christmas offering a few months ago went toward establishing a fund where we want to pay for 80% of your counseling for up to 6 months. You do not have to be a member of First Church for this. We want to help anybody and everybody who knows about this to get the financial help that they need and to give you hope. So again, the other thing I want to frame this message before we jump in, and many of you guys already know my life circumstance. I have a daughter, Millie, who just turned 3, and a son, Levi, who is going to turn 6 next week. So I say that because what I'm about to speak into does not come from a place of even guidance or advice. It's aspirational for me as well, right? Many of you have much more wisdom than I do. In fact, those parents like me that are navigating the young stages, you probably often wonder, am I getting it right? Or how badly did I mess my kid up today, right? Literally this past week, our daughter, Millie, again, who she just turned 3, was at the dinner table, and, mommy makes an amazing dinner like she always does, and it's food that she's eaten and enjoyed before. You young parents, you know where I'm going with this. But on this particular night, she sits down, she's like, I don't want this, I don't like this, right? And she's just crying and crying, like it's loud. The 4 of us are sitting there together trying to have a conversation. So again, I don't know if this was a good or bad parenting move. I'm still in the midst of discerning this. But she has like a roller, baby seat. I just decided to roll her about 15 feet away. Sounds really bad saying that loud. This is a good start, right? Levi and Emily and I, we could carry on a conversation, and she's still wailing and crying, and so she's, again, at that age where she might be starting to establish some forever memories. So I'm sitting in my seat, and Millie and I can, see each other, and I have this vision of, 25 years from now, she's sitting with a counselor, right? And they do what they do. Tell me about your earliest memory. Like, oh. Well, one time my dad excommunicated me from the dinner table, and I felt like I haven't fit in anywhere since, and so maybe that's just me, but I can easily jump to worst case scenario. All right, so let's talk about family. What is the point, right? What's the point of family? Well, if you live in America, unfortunately, we can reduce the American family to just kind of centering itself on consumption, safety, and individual happiness. Right, maybe when you get married, like, we just want to be happy. We want to have a family. We want to raise them up to be happy. In other words, right, again, through the American lens, let's be in tune with what we think about our expectation for family is. We can often have the expectation that if we can get what we want, have nothing go wrong, and everyone does what he or she wants to do, then our family's winning at life. I think that's way too small of a vision. And God says that as well. His reason for family is to live in such a way where we have an intentional purpose that goes beyond ourselves. It's so much bigger than our insulated bubble that we can often make it. Now again, right, families, young kids, we're just trying to survive the day often, right? We don't have the time or the margin or even the energy to think about, hey, what's our purpose beyond ourselves? But we need to know that this is the ideal. God created the family for the sake of blessing the world. He brought Adam and Eve into the world, told them to multiply, to expand their family. Don't make it just about you and what you can get. So that's the general mission for all families, right? And again, so you can think about this through the lens of whether you're single, whether you're a grandparent, anything in between. The general mission of all families is to bless the world. Who has God constructed us to be so that we can have an external focus? Then it's up to your family to discern God's particular mission for you. There's only one you, and your family is unique. How are you going to be a blessing to the world as you aim to be reflectors of God? This is what we're helping our kids to realize. When Levi goes off to school, it's like, Levi, I want you to be a leader, a helper, right? You're constantly thinking about other people. So let me give you some guiding questions. I'm starting wide, and we're going to work narrow here. And this is a conversation you could have regardless of the stage of family life that you are in. Again, even if you're grandparents or you're single, this is the purpose-filled questions we need to be discerning. As you discern your family's particular mission, ask these questions. Again, aspirational for our stage of parenting, but we want to get there. What is different or unique about your family? Right, you go around the table. You know, what are you talented at? You're naturally gifted at. What are you passionate about? What do you just flat out enjoy? God put that in you. What are your life experiences? Like, what have you gone through? What have you gone through that sets you up, right, to help other people? Secondly, what other families do we really respect? That could be fun, even with your young kids. Hey, what are some other families that you've seen that you maybe want us to be like, and why is that? What is important to our family? Ask your kids, hey, what do you think our priorities should be? What do you think should be most important? What kind of family do we want to be? Another clarifier would be, if others talk about our family, what do we want to be known for? It'd be interesting to hear from your kids what they said. How do we want other families to describe us? And again, all of us are inclined to easily gravitate toward just what makes us happy. But we can't settle for that. We have to clarify an intentional purpose. Why does our family exist? What do we want to be about? Just aiming to have a strong, healthy, safe family for the sake of itself is way too small of a vision for family. So back when Emily and I, we started dating, and way before we even considered that we would have a serious relationship that would lead to marriage, we said it's not going to be enough if we just look at each other and expect the other person to make us happy, right? We all know that's a short road, right? Like, just give it enough time. Like, okay, apparently God did not create the construct of marriage or family just to make us happy. No, he wants to grow us. And so literally on our first date, Emily and I were talking about how we're only going to go forward with this if we are better together for a sake and a purpose beyond ourselves. Partners in ministry, doing things that will have value beyond even our own lifetime. So what is this exact target, right? I'm trying to clarify as much as possible today. How do we become the kind of parents or grandparents or caretakers who are raising the kinds of kids who love Jesus and look like him? How are we becoming a family on mission? Well, the essence of family is formation. We're never in neutral. We're always being formed by our life experiences, right? Nature and nurture. You are where you came and who you came from and what and the experiences you had as you were growing up. You are who you are because of who you came from and who you grew up around. So if our aim is for our kids to love God and to be like Christ, what characteristics should we be nurturing them toward? I want to focus on 4 characteristics of a godly family, specifically that will require relational influence. This isn't reading a book. This isn't a download. This isn't even just coming to church. This is like, hey, we're all in, and we're going to define success by whether or not our kids are being formed, right, into these having these characteristics. First is contentment. Contentment. Second, resilience. Thirdly, character. And fourth, hope. Where does this come from? Well, this applies again to a wide range of thinking about how we grow up and mature. But God's vision explained through Paul in Romans chapter 5, he lays it out in pretty clear form. He says, we rejoice in our sufferings. That doesn't mean we're happy about struggling. It means we have proper perspective on why we could suffer and what it could lead to, an opportunity for greater strength and purpose that we wouldn't have had otherwise. God promises to always use suffering. So Paul says we rejoice in our sufferings. Why? Knowing that suffering produces endurance. I'm using the word resilience today. Another translation uses perseverance. And endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Now, I don't know about you. I just want hope, right? I don't want to start with suffering, but this is God's design. We have to pay attention to this. What's going to keep us from maximizing our family's purpose is failing to be formed by the Spirit into people of contentment, resilience, character, and hope. If we reduce the aim of our life and our family's purpose to we just want to be happy, we will not actually grow and mature into the people that God has in mind us to become. So here we go. First trait we want formed in our kids is contentment. Now, their level of contentment will be primarily dictated by your level of contentment, right? If you've ever said to your kids or anybody else, do what I say, not what I do. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, right? They watch, right? How we live our lives, how we spend our money, what we think is most important. Their level of contentment will be dictated by your level of contentment. If we, as adults, parents, always have to have the new, bright, shiny thing, they will naturally think that's what's necessary to be content. If we complain about everything that doesn't go our way, well, they're going to grow up believing that we're supposed to get everything we want and have the expectation that everything's just supposed to go my way. I'm always fascinated by the people who have it all, so to speak, or achieve it all, and they're still unhappy. You ever met some, really bitter, sad, depressed, rich people? Actor Jim Carrey, right, one of the richest actors in the history of, Hollywood, he once said this: I wish everyone could experience being rich and famous so they'd see it is not the answer to anything. See, more stuff and better circumstances will never get us to contentment because we'll never have enough, right? Only a right relationship with God, being contented in who we are, who He's created to be, us to be, and the people He puts us around will. That's what gets us to contentment. Now, this next part, I've had this illustration planned for literally a month. We did our run-through, right, with the worship team on Thursday. I was like, all right, this is going to engage everybody. But then something happened just a few days ago. So here's the deal. I have to provide this caveat. And I know I can't see the hands raised in the other campuses, but you can do it anyway. But I just want to know, how many of you do not know the name Scotty Scheffler? Okay, that's enough for me to provide a qualifier. All right, so everybody who's into golf knows who Scotty Scheffler is. Number one golfer in the world, passionate follower of Jesus Christ. Now, about 3 days ago, many non-golfers found out who Scotty Scheffler was. This is ridiculous. I hate that I'm taking up time in the message to explain this. But anyway, let's just go with it. So for those of you that raised your hand and still have no clue, I mentioned this guy's number one golfer in the world, and so down in Louisville, PGA Championship, one of the 4 major tournaments of the year is happening. He tries to get there quickly. There was, unfortunately, a fatal accident that had happened an hour before that, and so there's miscommunication between him and the police officer. He gets arrested on the way to the second round of playing golf. He gets taken to jail. I don't have this picture, right? Because anyway, he's in an orange jumpsuit, right? and doesn't know if he's going to make it back, does make it back in time. So for those of you that aren't aware of the context, look him up later. You're like, oh, wow, is he who Darin says he is? Well, it's a layered thing, and again, an unfortunate circumstance, but he is really one of the nicest guys out there. Now, so I want to show you this video clip that I came across a month ago, and I understand, right? I understand we can't relate, most of us, to a professional golfer, but I think it is important to get a look at the priorities of someone who has reached the top and what brings them contentment and validation of their identity. Right? Many of us, right, think that, I've been around the golfers, I spend all the money, right? I've been in the softball leagues, the guys are trying to live out their glory days, right? We think that we're a big deal. Here's a guy who's actually a big deal. I want us to pay attention to his proper perspective in the midst of being on top of the world. Check it out.
She's always a great reminder for me why I come out here and play. She keeps things in perspective for me really, really well. She's a great person for me to be able to share stuff with, and I get a little bit caught up in the competition, caught up at what goes on out here, and always trying to strive to be the best, and sometimes she needs to snap me back in and remind me why I come out here to play.
So first win, it was really special just having me and Meredith there. Meredith obviously knows me better than anybody, being my wife. She knows how hard it is when I don't win, and so being able to celebrate a win is pretty special.
Your first PGA Tour victory. Talk me through why this emotion we're seeing from you and your wife Meredith right now.
I can't look at her right now, but it's just a lot of hard work. She's been so supportive of me, and we worked really hard for this, and I'm so appreciative.
She knows what kind of goes on out here, but Meredith, I would say, was definitely not aware last night before I told her that if I won today, I would be #1 in the world. Is that correct? Yes. So she had no idea, and I told her that, because I want her to be able to experience these things with me, because she doesn't care what I'm ranked in the world, obviously. She gets to see how hard I work. She's seen the failures I've had over time and the sadness that comes with trying to achieve something and not being able to succeed at it.
This course proved how difficult it is to win on the PGA Tour. Can you describe how challenging of a match this was for you the last 2 days? Your wife Meredith.
Let's talk a little bit about your wife, Meredith. She's got that $1 million smile. What's it been like to have her by your side for all these great moments and know the family's going to be growing here?
Yeah, it's tremendous. We're very excited to have a little one of our own coming here pretty soon, and it'll be very special. She's going to be a great mom, and we're excited to start this next journey as parents.
I just remember everybody was kind of over here, and my family was back there, and so I do always remember after we got done and kind of celebrated. I always look for them. And I've seen the highlight on TV, and it looks like I'm going at the crowd like this, but I'm really just looking at Mare on the hill. And so we're kind of down in the back, and she's on the hill, and then, yeah, that was it. Yeah, I always get emotional when I talk about Meredith for some reason. I think Mare has such a good understanding of kind of how much work it takes to get to this point. In order to win a tournament like this, all the work that we both put in day out in order, to be able to do this. And so it's really fun when we're able to kind of celebrate good times like winning a tournament and accomplishing your goal. That's something that's pretty rare and just a lot of fun to be able to celebrate.
Meredith's not going to look at me any differently if I win, 50 times out here, if I lose my card next week or whatever it is, or get kicked off the tour. I'm very fortunate to have people around me that love me just the way that I am. And getting to go home to that is really special. Meredith's got the same smile, whether or not I shoot 86 or 66. It doesn't really matter to her. I'm very fortunate for that.
So here's a guy, right? #1 golfer in the world. He's in the greatest stretch of winning, right? Won 4 of the last 6 tournaments, since Tiger Woods. And so he's a guy who absolutely loves to win, hates to lose, right? But he has an absolute delight in his wife, who gives him proper perspective and balance, right? The only thing better than not caring if you win or lose is having a wife who does not care whether you win or lose, right? See, there's a great picture of contentment, not dependent on circumstance or achievement, right? Have people in your life that see you for exactly who you are. It's interesting, one of the most popular verses in the Bible is also one of the most misunderstood, Philippians 4:13. Right? Many people don't even go to church can recite Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so sometimes we'll just apply this to any challenge or mountain we want to climb, right? I want to get this job. I want to lift a certain amount of weight. I want to achieve something. Like, I can do it, right? With great effort and Christ leading the way. But we lose the actual fullness of context that Paul, the author, who's in prison, by the way, is speaking into. Look at the two preceding verses, 4:11. Paul says, I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Remember, he's in prison, by the way. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. And then he says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So life can throw whatever it wants at you. But if you have Christ, you can actually experience a peace that passes understanding, a deep contentment with him leading the way. So sometimes, again, we reduce that verse to something that it means so much more. Because contentment will always be dependent on the priority you place on the presence of God in your life. Is he enough in every circumstance, in every season? Contentment will always be dependent on the priority you place on the presence of God in your life. What helped Paul focus on his purpose is understanding God cared more about his holiness than his happiness. It's the same for you. It's the same for your family. To believe that God just wants you to be happy is the smallest possible vision you could have for your life, which leads us to the second characteristic of a godly family, resilience. I'm going to spend more time here than I am the other four today. I think the false expectation of the American Christian is that life is supposed to be easy, right? Because we see other people that are happy and have it all, and so life is supposed to be easy. Well, if God cared more about your happiness than your holiness, that actually might be the case, that life is supposed to be easy, you can have it all. But he doesn't. He wants to grow you, right? It's no accident that our mission, according to Scripture, is to deny ourselves. That's not easy. That's not a good time. To take up our cross and then follow him. James chapter 1, verse 2 is very practical. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, right? Similar to what we read in Paul in Romans. Again, it's not like, hey, I'm happy about my suffering, but I know that what could be found on the other side is something deeper and richer than I could have found otherwise. Why? Verse 3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Now, verse 4 is interesting, right? Because we just want to get comfortable as fast as we possibly can, when we're in the valley, in the struggle. James says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So suffering, struggle comes your way as opposed to trying to figure out how fast you can escape it. What if we sit in it and prayerfully consider, what could God be doing in this? Doesn't mean he caused it. Most of the time he hasn't, but it presents an opportunity. See, to expect hardship, it's not to be a pessimist, like, well, I guess tomorrow something else bad's going to happen. That's not what that means. It means to welcome struggle as opportunity for greater dependence on God and therefore greater strength. So what this means for our kids is how we teach our kids to relate to pain or hardship will impact how they think about themselves and the troubles that they'll naturally experience for decades to come. That they won't think that God is distant, God doesn't care, or life is just bad and everybody else is getting it wrong. It's like, okay, proper perspective. There's meaning in this. Remember, the essence of family is formation. We are formed by every single life circumstance. Nothing is neutral. We're either being formed into Christ-likeness or being deformed. So just wanting our kids to be happy and safe, again, it's way too small of a vision for their life, especially if we want them to grow and mature. Resilience, or perseverance, or endurance is a much better target because resilience is our ability to experience a wide range of emotions and still feel like ourselves, right? We're not just pumping our kids up, say, you can do it, you can be an overcomer, right? It's to experience a wide range of emotions while still feeling like this is who I am. My parents aren't pressuring me to be somebody that I'm not. And then as they stay true to who they are and then overcome, they start to see themselves as an overcomer, knowing that God has strengthened them to be that. So the more resilient I become, the less my happiness is dictated by circumstance. Because I understand through God's plan, suffering will always lead to a greater purpose. Suffering always has a greater purpose in mind. Resilience naturally only comes through navigating hardship. So we choose to stay in a challenging moment. We attempt to find our footing when we don't have the guarantee of success. It's then that we're learning how to tolerate distress. This is the essence of growth. So let's get specific, right? Especially as parents, right? This is obviously urgent for Emily and me, and you as well. How do we develop resilience in our kids? Research has found that the qualities children most need from their parents in order to develop resilience include this list. And for those of you that are taking notes, I'm going to mention this list one more time later in the message. Here it is. This is based on decades of research. What do they need to establish resilience? Empathy, listening, accepting them for who they are, providing a safe and consistent presence, identifying their strengths, allowing for mistakes, helping them develop responsibility, and building problem-solving skills. See, to build resilience in our kids, we should be guided by one question. Am I helping my kid tolerate and work through this distress, or am I encouraging my child to avoid and escape the distress? Easier said than done, right? I want my kid to be safe. I want my kids to be comfortable. We have to examine what's the goal in the moment. I think we all understand we live in a culture that's addicted to comfort, efficiency, everything coming easily, and the expectation that everything go our way. The consequence, though, is frankly, we end up kind of acting like babies whenever we're uncomfortable. It's like, oh man, it's supposed to be 73 degrees in here. It's like 74, and I'm burning up, right? That's right. In the heating and air conditioning day and age, right? You have those people, and you're like, whoa, like you walk outside in the wintertime, it's like, oh, I think I'm going to die. It's like, if you stand there for a second, you realize that you're not dying, number one. But anyway, we don't have time for my rants. But we act, we act like babies. We're uncomfortable whenever we have to wait for something. Oh, come on, our digital day and age, why am I have to wait for this, right? Everything should, quick. Or whenever we have to do something difficult, no, it's too hard. There are more, I'm pretty sure there are more adolescent adults, so to speak, in our day and age than ever before. Jessica Leahy, who was a school administrator, wrote a book called The Gift of Failure. You can probably tell by the title what she's getting at. She said, in order to raise kids who can begin to build their own adulthood separate from us, we are going to have to extricate our egos from our children's lives and allow them to feel the pride of their own accomplishments as well as the pain of their own failures. She said, every time we rescue, hover, or otherwise save our children from a challenge, we teach them to be dependent on us and thereby deny them the very education and competence we are put here on this earth to hand down. She said, the failure our children experience when we back off and allow them to make their own mistakes is not only a necessary part of learning, it's the very experience that teaches them how to be resilient, capable, creative problem solvers. Easier said than done, right? But how would they learn otherwise? Allowing your child to experience the consequences of their own irresponsibility and mistakes may be one of the most challenging endeavors. Because in the moment, it doesn't feel like love. I don't want my kid to struggle. I want them to be frustrated. I want them to be discouraged. But they have to sit in that moment, feel the weight of it, and then start to discern what does it look like to get through this, not carried through this every single time by my mom or dad. Right? This is how they grow up. Several years ago, author Jonathan Haidt wrote a book called The Coddling of the American Mind, which is commentary on parenting, but also the state of our current college institutions where it's so fragile, right? Because everybody's offended by everything, right? We've just become so soft, right? Like anything you say, right? Even today, right? Who knows who I've offended already, right? It's like, okay, careful there, careful here. But, right? And so this kind of, their goal in the book is talking about establishing kind of an anti-fragile person. And so in this book, the author describes a time when John Roberts, in 2017, he was the Chief Justice of the United States and invited to be the commencement speaker at his son's graduation from middle school. Keep that in mind. We're talking middle school audience here. Roberts, understanding the role of having to face painful experiences in the shaping of our character and maturity, here's what he said, part of his speech. He said to these middle schoolers, from time to time in the years to come, I hope you will be treated unfairly so that you will come to know the value of justice. I hope that you will suffer betrayal because that will teach you the importance of loyalty. Sorry to say, but I hope you will be lonely from time to time so that you don't take friends for granted. And then he goes on, he says, I wish you bad luck, again, from time to time, so that you will be conscious of the role of chance in life and understand that your success is not completely deserved either. And when you lose, as you will from time to time, I hope every now and then your opponent will gloat over your failure. These middle schoolers are like, okay, here we go. He says, it is a way for you to understand the importance of sportsmanship. He says, I hope you'll be ignored so you know the importance of listening to others. And I hope you will have just enough pain to learn compassion. Whether I wish these things or not, they're going to happen. And whether you benefit from them or not will depend on your ability to see the message in your misfortunes. Easier said than done as a parent to prioritize our kids' growth and maturity over even their safety. Research has shown that the worst kind of controlling parent, don't miss this, is the type that either withholds affection or makes affection contingent on performance, right? Conditional relationship. This type of parenting hits kids where they are most vulnerable. Their basic sense of safety, right? Where they should see parents, right? Like they are the safest people in my life, the ones that I trust the most. But it also hits them in their fear of abandonment. If I don't perform a certain way, they might not accept me. They might even draw away. So we must be very careful in how we interact with our kids when we're disappointed in their performance. It's a crucial moment, sometimes a very short moment. This is where our primary responsibility as a parent gets real, reflecting the unconditional love of God, our Father. My dad did a great job of this, right? After the game, of course, my mom, she was like next level when it came to sports. She would like cheer for the other team if they did something good. I'm like, come on, Mom. No, too far. But I vividly remember my dad after games, whether I played good or whether I played bad, he would say, good game, bud, right? And so but it was interesting because college athletes were once surveyed and asked, what is your worst memory from playing youth and high school sports? Their overwhelming response was the ride home from games with my parents. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about, where every single mistake that they made in that game was criticized, right, by their mom or their dad. That same study revealed who kids really wanted to be at their games and in the car on the way home from the game. You know who it was? Grandparents. Grandparents, mostly, don't criticize or micromanage in the moments after the game. The nature of grandparents, typically, they don't critique the coach's strategy or referee's call. Even in the face of embarrassing failures on the field, grandparents support their grandchildren with no ulterior motive or agenda. So the takeaway from this survey, in-depth survey, is if you want to become the kind of person your child wants to be around after the big game, act more like a grandparent, right? Remember how we cultivate resilience and perseverance in our kids. Empathy, listening, accepting them for who they are, providing a safe and consistent presence, identifying their strengths, allowing for mistakes, right? Just grace-based parenting, helping them develop responsibility and building problem-solving skills. So without resilience, we will not know how to respond well to losing in life. We won't. Which is why resilience or endurance then leads to character, because character is not formed through comfort, but through challenging circumstances, ones where we don't always overcome, right? We don't know the outcome. But I think we all understand that how you win, right, what you've experienced, what you've seen, how you win reveals some of your character. How you lose reveals all of your character. Adversity and not getting what you want will reveal who you are at your core. A person of godly character exemplifies patience, kindness, self-control, the ability to be happy for somebody else, right? Playing games with Levi, our 5-year-old, when he loses, right? That's an opportunity. It's a test, right? And for us competitive guys, it's not always easy to cultivate the capacity to be happy for somebody else. But we're forming character in those moments. So are we helping our kids know how to lose well in life? Maybe giving a participation trophy for everything probably isn't the answer. Like, all right, here, you're good at that. That's why you got a trophy. You're not that good at that. That's why you didn't get a trophy, right? It's why my kid, he's really good at drumming. Doesn't seem like he's going to be good at singing. If he says he wants to try out for American Idol, I'll be like, nope, not doing that. entertaining those first couple of episodes, all the bad singers, but what do we see there? Bad parenting. Be honest with your kids. You're good at some things, you're not good at singing. So anyway. Our tech team might need to edit some of this. All right, so failure forces us to evaluate where we find our significance and identity, right? My life is not falling apart if I lose at something. Failure, right, it's a humility factory, essentially, and humility is foundational to character, right? I grew up playing sports, and I loved a lot of different sports and did reasonably well, and so I liked baseball, but never played baseball. I was like, well, I'm just going to try out for the baseball team when I'm a freshman, and you know, I think that I'll make it. Well, I get in the batting cage, first time in my life, by the way, having never played baseball, and the ball comes like at me and then like turns at the last second. I look over at the coach who's going to decide whether I'm make the team or get cut from the team. I'm like, I think this thing is broken. He's like, no, Darin, that's what we call a curveball. He's like, that was a very short tryout. I got cut from the baseball team, so that's the end of that story. He said, you should go play in the 13-year-old prep league where they don't cut anybody. He's like, okay, I'll do that. And I think my highlight there was bases loaded, I got hit by a pitch. So RBI, anyway. The reality is, right, so that was a forming experience. Character is formed out of resilience through the struggle, which then gets us to hope. This is where we all want to be for ourselves and for our kids. Hope is confident expectation about the future. Right? If we're walking with God, we can walk in hopeful, confident expectation about what's to come. Now, what's interesting is how God created our hope to grow in the presence of struggle. This is why if we coddle our kids, we stall their growth in even hope. Kids with high levels of hopefulness have experienced with adversity, right? You talk about the kids that are most hopeful, they're going to talk about a time when they got through something, which means, fortunately, hope can be learned. It's much more than blind optimism, just believing everything's going to work out. Hope is a strength, a skill even that's developed, a mindset, a vision that's developed through overcoming. So to raise kids who are hopeful means stepping back, letting them experience disappointment, deal with conflict, learn how to assert themselves, and have the opportunity to fail. But all the while supporting them with a reminder of how God grows us up. Right, Levi, Millie, right? This is a bad day, right? You made a mistake, you struggled, but stay in the game. God's going to use this, and I can't wait to see how. So as we close, right, an obvious reminder. Above all, the greatest influence on our kids' character formation will be what they see in us. Our priorities that reflect our perspectives on life and on God. Where do you place your hope? About a month ago, I was meeting with a close friend of mine, and he has 4 kids, all still in school age, very successful in the business that he's currently in, was offered a new job, a new position where he would have to be out of town a lot, like every single month. And the guy that was hiring him told him that he would make $10 million over the next 5 years. I don't care what you do, that's nuts, right? And this guy's my age. But the thing is, in his current job, whenever he would leave town, his son would act up. And so he's telling this to his future potential boss who wants to hire him, right, for $10 million the next 5 years. And his boss said to him this, $10 million has always solved those problems for me. You talk about a guy who doesn't get it, right? My friend over here and this guy over here thinking that's all about the money. My friend, right, said no to that job offer. Perspective on what matters most. And as I was thinking about that afterwards, what came to mind is, can you imagine the loud and clear message of priorities that sent to his wife and his kids? They're all at an age where they will remember, my dad was offered this. Here's the decision that he made, to be all in where he was with his kids, knowing time is short, time is precious, and intentional relational influence is the only way for formation to happen if we're going to be the primary influencers as parents. I want to show you one more short clip from Scotty Scheffler. This was his last tournament, major tournament that he won, the Masters, the most prestigious golf tournament of the year. He's referring back to Sunday morning, heading into the final round, a conversation he had with his friends. Check it out.
Sitting around with my buddies this morning, I was a bit overwhelmed because I told them, I was like, I wish that I didn't want to win as badly as I did, or as badly as I do. I think it would make the mornings easier, but I love winning. I hate losing. I really do. And when you're here in the biggest moments, when I'm sitting there with the lead on Sunday, I really, really want to win badly. And my buddies told me this morning, my victory was secure on the cross. And that's a pretty special feeling, to know that I'm secure for forever. And it doesn't matter, whether or not I win this tournament or if I lose this tournament. My identity is secure for forever.
I mean, I love that's the number one golfer in the world, right? He's open about how much he loves Jesus, right? There's even a documentary on Netflix where it shows him reading his Bible. This guy's grounded. He knows who he is. His identity is secure in Christ. He knows how to fail because he has proper perspective on family and on faith. He just became a dad also for the first time just less than 2 weeks ago. Russell Moore wrote a book called The Storm-Tossed Family. And so this is the crux of this conversation, right, as far as what our target is for all of us. He says, we want our children to flourish in the world. We want our children to look back on us with love and respect. But we should want, most of all, that our children will look back and see that our only self-identity was this. What could wash away our sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. He said we should parent in such a way that our children see that our hope for them is not that they are successful enough to look good to our peers, nor is it that they are well-behaved enough not to keep us awake at night, but that they are, like us, alive to God through Jesus Christ. Isaiah chapter 40, let me close with this, speaks to our only hope. God gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. If you've been knocked down in life, know that while you're down, you are in the greatest position you could possibly be to find strength in God alone. May we be the kind of parents, grandparents, caretakers, and people who understand that there is no hope outside of the person of Jesus Christ. And our kids know at an early age how imperfect we are. We're just trying hard to get it right, and at the end of the day, we just want to point them to the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. At each campus, at the end of the service, the prayer team will be down front. If you don't know Jesus, we want to have this conversation with you. This is why the church exists. It's why Jesus hadn't come back yet. The work is not yet done. We have no hope outside of him. We want you to know about that hope and the grace that he has in mind for you. That's why I believe that you are here today, not to be a better parent, but to follow Jesus with your life. So we'd love to have that conversation with you. The band's going to come forward at each campus and sing, "Oh, Come to the Altar," right? Ideally, we're all going to sing it together, and I pray that we loudly say the one part, the Father's arms are open wide. Wide enough for every single person, regardless of your past, regardless of how many times you got it wrong, and with your kids. The Father's arms are open wide. He has life and purpose in mind for you today. God, we thank you for the way that you never give up on us, the way that you guide us by telling us we are not meant to be perfect. We are just meant to show up to the reality of you in our lives and understanding how you work, how you grow us and mature us, and that is through the very struggles that we work so hard to try to avoid. May we embrace them, knowing that they are a wide open door of opportunity to experience greater dependency and intimacy with you, and knowing that you've paved the way for even greater future than we would have had otherwise. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.